My manipulative girlfriend invited my abusive and neglectful dad who abandoned me 20 years ago over to our house without telling me, so I kicked them both out. My girlfriend and I have been together for a year and a half, and when she first found out that none of my family have contact with me, she freaked out. She comes from a very big and close family, so I can definitely understand why it must be confusing for her, but what I could never understand are her desperate and never-ending attempts to get me back in touch with my family, specifically my father. You see, my father left me 19 years ago when I was 6 and has never contacted me since then. Up until he left, he was also very abusive to me. I still have scars from what he did on my arms and legs, and I still sometimes wake up in the middle of the night to the feeling of being roped by him. I remember one specific instance of him coming home from a casino and taking his frustrations out on me after I accidentally spilt some milk on him. That was the first ever scar he gave me. I was just 3 years old. He was an alcoholic at the time too and took his anger out on me and my mother. My mother ended up passing away when I was 5, and a year later my father was deemed unfit to care for me and I was given up for adoption. I had one aunt and uncle who didn't want to take me in, however, as they were not in a financial position to do so. The thing is, my girlfriend knew all of this and knew the history I had with my father, but despite this she kept insisting that I reconnect with him. She is very religious and a big believer in Christ and forgiveness. I remember we once got into a huge argument about my father, where I told her to stick Christ where the sun don't shine. She ended up becoming very angry with me, however, as apparently I insulted Christ. Granted I did, but I was justified in my opinion. Anyway, my girlfriend for the longest time has been going on about reuniting me with her father. When she brought up the idea of going out of her way to actually set us up for a reunion, I drew the line and told her not to do that and that if she did we would be over. Up until that point she had only talked about how nice it would be for us to reunite, but now she was talking about actually making it happen. This occurred about 3 months ago and things proceeded to go seriously downhill. It seemed like every week she was talking about my father, about how I will forgive him when I see him. She kept using words like whenever she talked, so I asked her not to do that as our reunion was not happening. About a month ago we ended up getting into a massive argument over it. I had come home from a long day of work, and the first thing she said to me when I walked through the door was, "So I think I found your father online and I think it would be really great if you two." I cut her off immediately and told her to shut the F up about my father. She got mad and told me not to swear at her, so I swore at her again asking what the F was wrong with her. She did not take this lightly and made the remark that it's obvious my dad wasn't around because I swear like a sailor. I got so mad at that comment of hers I left the house without another word and stayed at my best friend's for the night. Just before I left though she made a comment about how she's certain I would change my attitude were I to actually meet my father. Things were already extremely rocky in our relationship and I thought we were heading for a breakup. The plummet to rock bottom in our relationship came last week. My girlfriend had not talked about my father much for the last few weeks since the incident I just described, and I figured maybe she realized she was acting insane. Oh, how wrong I was. While at work about a week ago I got a text message from my girlfriend telling me she has an amazing surprise for me, topped off by a winky face. I responded that I can't wait to see my surprise, figuring it was the lingerie that I had seen her looking at for the last while. Unfortunately for me, it was not the lingerie. I headed home expecting a nice surprise, and my girlfriend answered the door telling me to close my eyes and let her lead me to the kitchen where my surprise was. She took my hand and escorted me. Once in the kitchen, she told me to open my eyes. I opened them to see my surprise, which was perhaps the worst surprise anyone has ever gotten in history. I looked in disgust as I saw my dad sitting there on the chair in our kitchen smiling at me. I didn't even say anything when I saw him, but I felt a million emotions at once. My father stood up and started walking over to me for a hug, but I started yelling. I yelled at him to get the F away from me before I called the police on his or pissed behind. I asked him if he was sick in the head and deranged to think I would ever want to see him again. I then turned to my girlfriend and called her a naive, stupid woman who thinks life is sunshine and rainbows and forgiveness for all. I asked them both how stupid they both had to be for them to think I'd see them and start smiling like an idiot. I yelled at both of them to get the F out. I forcefully threw my dad out, which felt really good, and yelled at my girlfriend until she left the house in tears too. I ended up packing her a small bag of clothes and tossing it at her out of the window too. So I ended up kicking my girlfriend out, and the very next day her entire family pulled up to my house. Seeing the people exiting the car felt like those meme videos of about 25 clowns all exiting the same vehicle. It's almost as if the entire slew of aunts and uncles and cousins kept on coming. I knew I was in for a wild argument as soon as I saw this. My girlfriend was ultimately the one to knock on my door, and despite my better judgment I answered. I asked her what she wanted and she told me she as well as her entire family thinks it's completely unacceptable that I did what I did. I told her that she must have a family of buffoons if they all think that what she did was okay, and her dad heard this and ended up storming up to the door. "You think we're buffoons for supporting you getting back in touch with a good man who raised you?" I looked at him for a second, and the gears in my head started turning. I looked at my girlfriend's face and realized something. I asked my girlfriend's father what she had told them all about my dad, and the answer that I got made me literally double over when laughing. According to the dad, my girlfriend described my dad as a man who had his own issues and occasionally drank, but he was there for me throughout my entire childhood and did his best to keep us afloat by working 2 jobs. Apparently after my mother's death he went clean however and raised me as best he could, but the reason I cut contact with him is because he ended up remarrying and I could never forgive him for it. After spending a few minutes laughing at what my girlfriend's dad had to say, I gave a brief summary of who my father was, sparing no gruesome details and even showing the scars on my arms and legs as proof. My girlfriend's dad looked horrified before asking her if she lied to them, and she admitted to maybe embellishing the story a little. He ended up apologizing to me and walked back with his daughter into the car looking infuriated. And just like they got out, I saw them all defy the laws of physics and get into the car before driving off.